My name is Tammy Ravis, and I'm the Visual and Performing Arts Librarian, now actually the Arts and Media Librarian and Copyright Coordinator at the University of Montana's Mansfield Library. And today I'd like to welcome you to our very first annual Public Domain Student Art and Film Festival. So, what is a public domain work? A public domain work is not protected by copyright law and is therefore freely available for everyone to use. Works may not be protected by copyright for a number of reasons. First, the work does not qualify for copyright protection. A work has to be original, be fixed in a tangible medium of expression, and have some degree of creativity in order for it to be protected by copyright. For example, a name or a short phrase cannot be protected by copyright. An idea, a common fact, scientific hypotheses, discoveries, and theories, as long as they are not expressed and fixed in a tangible medium of expression, they do not qualify for copyright protection. Secondly, a copyrighted work's duration of protection may have expired or was not renewed. And these particular works are going to be what we will be exploring in this year's Public Domain Student Art and Film Festival. A copyright owner could explicitly dedicate their work to the public domain. And lastly, any work that was created by the United States federal government does not qualify for copyright protection. So, how long does copyright last? In general, copyright protection lasts for the author's life plus 70 years. And what we're going to be looking at in tonight's festival are works that have been published prior to 1925. And works that have been published prior to 1925 are all in the public domain now. It used to be that for many years, this date was 1923. So any work that was published prior to 1923 was in the public domain. But in the last couple of years, that particular date has shifted to a rolling date. And hence, we now have newer works entering the public domain. For this festival, what I wanted to be able to allow students to do was to engage with works that were published in 1924, newly minted public domain works in a creative manner. So I have opened this up to works of art as well as works of film. So what I did is I went through some of the books that were published in 1924 that were in our collection. And let me just show you some of these works. So here I'm sharing my screen, and this is this year's Public Domain Student Art and Film Festival site. And here are 12 novels and short story collections as well as plays that were first published in 1924. And today we're going to have some adaptations from our very first annual winners of the Public Domain Student Art and Film Festival, Clint Connors and Salisha Oldbull, from Tales from Silver Lands by Charles Finger and Paul Honoré, who illustrated the book, as well as Moses, a play, a protest, and a proposal by Lawrence Langner. There were several others here on this list from which folks could have chosen. And I encourage all of you viewing to have a look at some of these. Many of these are going to be on the Internet Archive, or just type into your browser archive.org type in the title and you'll be able to have a look at some of these. I would like now to take this opportunity to introduce both Salisha and Clint. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce to all of you Clint Connors, as well as Salisha Oldbull. So I'm going to ask both of them some questions about their experience with the parameters of this contest, as well as talk to them a little tiny bit about their process for the creation of their works. So I'll start with you, Salisha. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am Salisha Oldbull. I was born in Billings here in Montana, and I grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation. I am Salish and Crow. I really love it here in Arley. I live in Arley, and I've been helping. I've been working as a student support worker for many years, and one of the things I wanted to do for a long time was to get an art degree. So I've been doing that, working on it, and I ended up in the first group of students that the University of Montana, when they offered a online degree program. So that's about a little bit about me.
Okay. So what year are you in your art degree program right now?
I would say I was probably like year 2.5 or 3. I've been just doing it part-time, so I still have a handful of courses left. I should be done in about a 1.5 years or so.
All right, wonderful. So what brought you to U of M?
I'm an alumni. I have a few degrees from the university already, and I really enjoy going to school there. I feel like it serves as the best connection for the tribe that I'm enrolled, and I find that I can enhance my education through that school out of all the schools, and I really like being home, and so that school is closest to home.
Okay. And lastly, what appealed to you about this contest?
Originally, before I had really looked into it, the thing that appealed the most was just the thought of being able to incorporate works that have expired their copyright. And I was wondering if originally I had wondered if the contest incorporated photographs. And so that was my original interest in it. But then when I had visited with you and found out more, and then I just sat down and looked into it, it was still really interesting. I ended up finding some really cool artwork from the book that I had chosen. So I just went forward with it and just gave it my best shot.
Okay. All right. So next I'm going to ask you, Clint, some questions, and I'll just ask the same questions. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Clint. I am a journalism and media arts major at the University of Montana. I'm originally from Butte. and kind of wanted to pursue these two degrees because they both really embrace the art of storytelling, the art of writing, which are both things I've fallen in love with in my life, and both degrees have given me the opportunity to explore that passion.
Okay, great. And what brought you to U of M?
U of M. Well, just as far as looking at schools, I definitely wanted to stay in state if possible, just to kind of stay close to my family and keep costs down. And looking, U of M, I had heard great things about both programs. Media Arts had a really great film program, and the journalism program too ranked pretty high across the country. So I thought I'd be in good hands there, and yeah, I just kind of wanted to explore what Missoula had to offer.
Great. And what appealed to you about this contest?
Well, the big thing was the fact that it had the word film in it. I love getting involved in anything with film. I love film, loved it all my life. So I thought it'd be a fun challenge to explore. Also, the fact that it was public domain was interesting. I hadn't known anything was entering the public domain. I'd heard the story about how Disney had kind of convinced legislators to keep the law reformed so they could keep the copyright for Mickey Mouse. So that kind of still had the public domain in my head, and I kind of wanted to explore what works had finally been let off their leash.
Okay. All right. And lastly, a question for both of you. We are finding ourselves in very extraordinary times, and I'm just kind of curious what has kind of been giving you hope or what kinds of things have been giving you joy throughout this unfortunate circumstance that we're all finding ourselves in.
Well, I guess I could go. One of the things that I really like is being home with my family. I'm definitely a non-traditional student now, and I have 2 young children, and being able to spend a lot more time with them is pretty significant. Other than that, I am keeping up with work. I'm working remotely, and I'm also I was already an online student, so that hasn't really changed. But I really enjoy the personal time as well, like being able to stop and work on different art projects that I wouldn't normally have this much time to do. I really like that a lot. But I guess that's where I'm at with keeping peace of mind.
Great. And you, Clint?
Yeah, kind of very similar things. I get to be home with my family, which is great. I always enjoy coming back home to them. I work at the Kaiman, the school newspaper, and I'm also a DJ at KBGA. So those things keep me busy. So just the fact that I'm kind of able to still participate in those things gives me hope. I also enjoy seeing, because a lot of the arts programs have kind of been put to a standstill, but it's great to see that artists are still finding ways to put their work out there. The International Wildlife Film Festival is moving remote. The Missoula Children's Theater's sending a lot of their materials home so families can find their own place. So I guess it gives me hope that for artists such as us and everyone else, that not all is lost.
Before you start sharing your film, quick question for you. What did you learn about public domain materials through your participation in this contest?
So a lot of what I learned was, I guess, what works had entered and what works hadn't. My biggest thing was I didn't know music hadn't entered the public domain and had its own separate law. In fact, I originally had a grand plan with this film that I was going to pick songs from 1924 and put them in the soundtrack and be all Quentin Tarantino style with it. But then I learned they weren't public domain yet, so I kind of had to take a different route with it. I also learned looking through the licenses of a lot of what I used in the film. So that includes music, that includes the sound effects, and then most of the backgrounds I did film myself, but some of them I did pull online for kind of locations that would have been hard to find. So they all had licenses with them. Some of them you had to credit the artist, some you couldn't. There were others that were for non-public purposes, so those couldn't be used. So it was just kind of sorting through the licenses, figuring out what each of those meant, and figuring out how to credit them, or if they need to be credited at all. But I did want to credit them all anyway, so they all are all in the credits. But yeah, just kind of through the whole process, learning what you can and can't use.
Yes. And for our viewers out there, with respect to music, I'm guessing you mean the sound recordings, right?
Right. So except for the voice actors who I recorded them with people I knew, but for music, of course, I mean like the music that plays in the background in the soundtrack, and then as well as the sound effects, like when you hear stamping feet or the paper flipping, just that kind of sound. Everything that's most of the stuff that's not coming out of the characters' mouths.
Okay. Wow. That's great. And so one quick aside with respect to sound recordings is that sound recordings in the United States, none of them are in the public domain yet. And that even includes old cylinders back, in the early 1900s. And this was due to sort of an interesting legislative history with, to make a long story short. So I'm really curious, what drew you to the public domain book that you chose for creating this artistic adaptation?
Right. So I saw it was about Moses, the Bible story of Moses, and a few things drew me to that. One was just the fact that I knew the Moses story, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought it would lend itself well to comedy because Bible stories have kind of these big epic stories, and I like it when comedies like go kind of big beyond the humor, kind of have a big story behind that. So I thought that would be cool to kind of explore. The other reason I wanted to do it was a few films ago, I had adapted Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare into a film using modern day political figures. And I really had a lot of fun with that and adapting the story and seeing how it could work in a different time period. And I'd always been eager to try that again. So I saw the Moses book and I thought this would kind of be an opportunity to explore that again. And when I got the book, I was surprised. It was actually very different from the Bible story. It follows it fairly closely the first half, but then the second half kind of focuses after what happened when Moses and the rest of the Jewish people ended up leaving to the Promised Land and kind of the repercussions that came with that. So actually, the film most of the film focuses a lot on that second act, which I thought Lawrence Legner wrote very well. It is a very, very great play.
Okay. All right. So what do you think was your biggest challenge in adapting this work to film?
I'd say one of the biggest challenges was keeping it short. I'd written a first draft of the film that was a lot longer and a lot more serious, and it had a longer opening. And the pace was just kind of slow. It also didn't meet the 10-minute limit. So really trying to condense this big play and this big story into kind of a smaller film that could be easily digestible. I think that was probably the biggest challenge, and having it all logistically make sense, especially since we were moving at centuries in time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And before we get into you showing or premiering your work for everybody, could you tell us a little bit about the medium and the style that you chose for your adaptation?
Right. So I had wanted to do it. I'd wanted to do it kind of in some form of animation. Largely because I love working with voice actors. I think that's a fun medium to work with each of the actors personally on that. However, I didn't want to do an animated background for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a pretty mediocre drawer, so it wouldn't look the best that way. One, but two, I also just kind of liked how this kind of cutout style might look. When I was a kid, I used to watch this animated show called Charlie and Lola, which was from the UK, and it kind of had this collage style mixing of live action and animation that I really liked. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to go for that. And I ended up filming the backgrounds instead of just taking pictures because I wanted it to still feel alive even as the characters kind of move in this static way. So then it was just a matter of drawing the characters each pose on a green background and then basically treating it like you would treat an actor on a green screen, putting it in the editing and then keying out the green and then just inserting them into the filmed background.
Okay. Alrighty. So without any further ado, Clint, please take it away and let's have a look at your film.
"20 years ago, Mayor Mo Abraham burnt down all of the government buildings in his city, completing his quest for lawlessness. The following is a hastily put together dramatization of the events that unfolded."
Good evening and welcome to XYZ News. I'm Caleb Mitchell.
And I'm Aaron Jones. Chief of Police Randy Adams died of a drug overdose on Tuesday, just as his campaign for mayor was drawing to a close. Witness Abe McConnell will tell us what happened that fateful night.
"My car smells like the moon."
With Adams gone, his opponent, Mo Abraham, won the mayoral election by default, and it sounds like he's got big plans for our little city.
Well, Mo, this certainly is a novel concept.
It sure is, Aaron, and my task force agrees. Ah! This is my sister, Miranda.
Hey.
And a bunch of random guys I pulled from the street.
Oh.
Together, we make up a voluntary organization that punishes any and all who try to start a government.
So, you're enforcing a lack of enforcement with enforcement?
Look, you can't think about it or else the whole thing falls apart.
Mo, in a recent interview with Times Daily, you said, and I quote, "We need to get rid of writing. Don't at me." Could you elaborate on that more?
Well, Caleb, if you look at writing over the course of history, you'll see that it's the foundation of terrible governments. The Declaration of Independence, Plato's Republic, the list goes on. Writing is a slippery slope that leads to laws, and that's why me and my team want to make sure no one puts pencils to paper ever again.
You heard it here first, folks. No writing allowed.
I guess this means we can't read the teleprompter anymore.
I'm going to stop reading the teleprompter now.
Seriously, guys, stop reading the teleprompter.
You are going to get me killed, you dumb
No writing!
We'll be right back after these messages.
You need to chill out.
And you need to remember who's in charge of making sure no one's in charge. Look, Miranda,
I know this is hard, but when society evolves to the point where it can handle anarchy without enforcement, we can get rid of the task force.
How long will that take?
How long will that take? Only a couple centuries. God, you're impatient.
Will you just put the laws back into place? Can't you, unburn those buildings?
Okay, first of all, that's not at all how this works.
Give me a break. I failed science.
Second of all, you know that our government wasn't better before. I mean, if there weren't any police, maybe Mom wouldn't have... I'm sorry. Look, can we talk about this later? We're invading our first city tomorrow, and I really need to concentrate.
And I was like, policymaker? I hardly know her! Hey, why aren't you laughing?
Caleb, have you noticed that Mr. Adams' death was a little strange? I mean, no one even found his body. Or any drugs.
You're overthinking it, Aaron. Besides, he left a death note. Oops, totally OD'd again. Guess I'm dead. My body's not buried in the desert, so don't look for it there. Seems legit to me.
Caleb, are you thick? Death notes are written on college-ruled paper, not wide-ruled.
Do you mind, old man?
Sorry. I'm just watching a video I took of Randy Adams getting murdered.
Well, can you watch the evidence that Mr. Adams was murdered somewhere else?
Will do.
God, people are rude. Wait, where did you go? Please come back!
Hey, Miranda. It's amazing how cheap teleportation is getting. Anyway, what are you doing?
Writing a petition.
For what?
For lawlessness across the world. I figure it'll be a nice alternative to invading other cities.
I don't get it.
Look, Mo wants to get rid of other governments, right? So, I figure if I can get enough signatures, maybe he can use this to persuade other governments and other lawmakers to step down. Then he'll finally see the good that writing can bring.
I don't get it.
Here, read this rough draft.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yes, I knew you'd understand.
You want me to bring communism back?
Exactly, bring communism. Wait, no.
I remember communism. It was so mediocre.
No, communism is the exact opposite of what we want right now.
I can get you lots of signatures. For Mother Russia!
Abe, please!
So we meet again, Mr. Mayor. Wait a minute. We haven't met yet. Okay. So we don't meet again. Oh, that is so awkward. What's the opposite of meet again?
Come one, come all, especially if you're a worker, communism's to die for. Pretty great gun we've got, eh, comrade? Hey, isn't this kind of like when you killed...
Now, which of these lowlifes do you suppose wrote this garbage?
I did.
You?
Mo, this has to stop.
How could you? I mean, after all we've worked for? All we've dreamed of?
I didn't want any of this. I didn't want to live in a city where I'd be paranoid if I did so much as pick up a freaking pen.
Then why are you still living here? Escort her out of the city.
I'm not touching a dead body. You go look for it.
I've got a better idea.
Aaron, no. We are not doing dark magic.
Sir, the invasion's not going well. Our enemies have a big expensive shooty thingy at the border.
What's worse, we hear a counterattack is being planned.
How long do you think we have till they strike?
Not very long, sir.
That's it. Get the tanks ready. Everyone knows you don't bring a gun to a big, expensive shooty thingy fight. I just hope we don't hear any more bad news.
This is Caleb Mitchell with bad news. We have just received disturbing new footage concerning Randy Adams' death from resident Abe McConnell. We are currently communicating with his spirit using dark magic.
Hey everybody, check out this funny video!
I don't believe it! That phone shoots such great footage, but also Mo lied to us.
Okay, guys. I know we're in kind of a tricky situation, but I have a solution. And it lies over there.
Get him.
Big, expensive explosion thingy!
Nice try. Not falling for any more of your tricks.
Big expensive explosion thingy.
Now, was that so bad?
I could hear the screams of trapped souls.
You get used to it.
I'm sorry. I was worried about you. I thought I should find you.
You got kicked out of town, didn't you?
Yep. After the whole city was destroyed. And there's something else I should probably tell you.
You murdered Randy?
How did you know?
Well, the death note was on wide-ruled paper.
Right. Miranda, I can't lose you too.
Well, will you let me write again?
Yeah, I'll let you write.
Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yes.
Thank you for letting me show it.
Oh, yes, of course. So, forgive me, my memory sometimes isn't so great. But where did you shoot the live footage or the photographs that you used for the background?
So all of it was shot in here in Butte, Montana.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Except, again, some of the locations like the newsroom and then the little forest they were at outside, those were stock images from online. But yeah, everything that was filmed was filmed here. Or no, I lied. So the scene where Miranda is at the computer, that was in my dorm room.
Ah, okay. Great. All right. Well, thanks again so much, Clint. That was very funny, and I appreciated how expressive the characters were, both with their voices. The voice actors did a really good job, and also your animation. It was really. I really appreciated how expressive you made those characters in the different situations.
Thank you.
Moving along, and thanks again to Clint for sharing his work. So Salisha, I'll ask the same questions that I asked Clint. What did you learn about public domain materials through your participation in this contest?
I think the main thing was I didn't realize that there was a public domain. I just kind of figured that once somebody created something or had original works that you pretty much couldn't use it. So it was kind of exciting to see that because I think some of the things that I've been juggling around in my classes is trying to figure out the difference between just like stealing people's work or trying to protect your own ideas and slowly warming up to, once you put it out there, you put it out there. So you are sharing, your own intellectual property, but there's not, unless you have that copyright, there's not like a whole lot that you can do. But even that, I don't think you can do that on certain types of artwork. So anyway, that was something that I thought was cool, was to be able to go back and use things from that far ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. A lot of people don't know what the public domain is, and there are also a lot of misconceptions about what is protected and what isn't. So yes, I think that learning about the public domain, I know that when I first kind of got started with some of my journeys in copyright, and I probably should have made this clear to everybody, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on television, and none of this is legal advice. That's my standard disclaimer for everybody. It's really interesting. I think that a lot of folks don't realize that copyright is automatic in this country. And, so long as it has some degree of creativity and it has some degree of originality, then the work is protected. And, that protection lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. But it's also very interesting too, just how, what have you been talking about in your art classes about what it means to, or what intellectual property means? I'm curious.
Well, one of the things that I've been learning about is, and I don't really see it used a lot, like some of the terminology, maybe I just, because of being an older student, I am really taking in a lot of more information than I did when I first went to college. It's really sticking, and one of the terms that I like is the word pastiche. And so that's just where you're copying a concept of somebody's, but you're not making a parody, you're not making fun of it, you're like trying really hard to make it as the best you can, as something that's not a joke, something that's like pretty serious. It's like meant to more or less honor the original art. And so when I'm like on social media, I go follow some of my favorite artists, and every now and then you'll see something that they've done that was inspired by something from like the 1800s or the 1700s, and it's really cool to see somebody's version of an older concept or a traditional concept, I guess. But just those two terms, parody and pastiche, are something that I've really been interested in, and I think that just the idea of it is helping me to understand like artists who share their ideas one of the biggest examples I have is like I like to do beadwork, and people will share their original designs on social media, and they do it in a way to inspire people that are just learning to do beadwork. And so when they put it out there, one of the things that I've noticed the most was they'll say, you know, if you reproduce this work that I'm showing you, please don't sell it. Please don't try to make a profit from it. And to me, that's takes courage, or it takes like bravery to be able to put something out there and know that fully well that somebody is going to copy what you're doing exactly, almost. So anyway, that's where my thoughts are with intellectual property in terms of art. You know, it's just those concepts that, you know, you're putting your own content on something, and when you put it in the internet, I mean, there's no telling how many people are gonna copy what you do per se. So
Right. Yes, that's so true. That is so true. A lot of people think, oh, it's out on the internet, I'm just gonna copy it. No, that's not how this works. What drew you to the public domain book that you used to create your work of art?
Well, the book that I liked was The Tales from Silverlands by Charles Finger. Originally, I liked it because it was very similar to our tribal oral histories, like the format of the stories. And it's just a compilation of stories from, I believe, South America. And after I had gone through, I'm a huge believer in our oral history, and I feel like the concept applies across the world. Like everybody has an oral history. I think I feel very strongly against calling them myths or fables. I feel like a lot of oral histories, especially for tribes in America, give a sense of place. You're able to hear a story, the story will sometimes have a connection to a landmark, and then the landmark gives you a sense of place as a part of your self-identity, and that's the basic core of your being. And so being able to have a strong self-identity helps you to grow in other ways as a person. And so that's what attracted me to the book here, because I thought, oh, these are their stories, these are their some of their beliefs, some of their landmarks. It gives you morals, it explains basic values, and to me that's pretty important. So
great, thank you. So what was your biggest challenge in adapting your chosen public domain book to your own work?
Well, I found out about this contest kind of late, but at the time I was learning a few new techniques for photo editing, and the book does have a few illustrations in it, and they're woodcuts, and I don't know if it's honore or honor, how you say the artist's last name, but the woodcuts are pretty awesome. And I went through and used stock photos because I didn't want, I wanted to use images of animals that the stories were talking about, but of course I don't have access to all those animals. So I went through stock images and grabbed those, and then I like bright colors. I like collages. I didn't know I like collages so much, but I do. And so I went through and tried to put some imagery that would capture some of the actions from the stories, and then I incorporated one image of one woodcut that was illustrated in the book.
Okay. So was there any like your work of art is digital, and so what kind of software did you use to create your collage?
I used Adobe Photoshop.
Oh, okay.
I guess I didn't really answer that question. That was the challenge. I was trying to use that software trying to put together something. My favorite thing is beadwork. So I guess that's textile. So the digital forms are really challenging for me. Yeah, that had to be the hardest part, is putting the images together.
Okay. And I think my last question was a little bit about the medium and the style, and you already answered that. So why don't we just simply get into your work of art? So this is Salisha Oldbull's work. This is Why. Did I have the title correct?
Oh, yes. I don't remember.
Yay. All right. So talk us through a little bit about the entire piece, and then we can focus on some more details.
Well, one of the things that I've picked up over the years is that a lot of indigenous people, or a lot of tribes, they wouldn't think of a map in terms of how we see a map. Or they wouldn't think, let me rephrase that. They wouldn't think of like a timeline as a linear concept, like 1800, 1801. It would be more easier to think of a timeline in terms of landmarks. And so that's kind of how this image is, it shows it just in terms of animals. I picked out a few stories. Some of them, I didn't read every story, but some of the stories feature these animals. And so kind of what I said before is, if you see something like a landmark, it helps you to remember why that's important. And a lot of times those things refer back to a value, and it's usually a shared value. It's usually something that you live by. So that's what I tried to do with this, is to capture some of the animals, and it shows some of the imagery, like down in the corner there's a fox, there's a white fox, but in the story it's I think it's a silver fox. And so for those people, if they were to see these animals, they may or may not remember, what's important about this animal. So for example, the easiest way for me to explain it is, like, in our tribe, we have animals that show us right from wrong. So for the Salish, one of those is the coyote. And we know coyote to have a certain characteristic or a certain personality, and either you do or you don't do what coyote did. So I just picked out animals from several stories from the text, and place them on there, as to me that symbolizes a memory or a value. So a person could look at that and say, oh, this is what the flamingo means to us, or this is what the seal means to us. And up in that right corner, I think there's a detailed photo of that is a condor. And so somebody would be able to look at the condor and remember, this is what the condor means to us. So that's, I just picked from the stories that did have animals in them. And then, yeah, that's the condor. Yeah.
Yes.
And the original picture had a sun behind it. So I like how you can see the feathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the back of the art is layered with a woodcut image from the artist from the text, Paul Honor, I guess. And that is supposed to be a witch. So there was like a big old story about the witch and how she was defeated. And so to me, that's like a overcoming something, I guess. But the work as a whole, I just titled it "This Is Wise" because all of these stories, when you think of them, explain why certain values are important, or why certain actions are not acceptable, or why, and I really don't like the term fable, but I guess that's the easiest way to explain the importance of these stories. To me, they're oral histories, and I know that a lot of Indigenous people across the world still really live by their oral histories, and I believe the same about South America.
Great. So I know that you said you were a fan of bright colors, and I noticed that the colors, the palette that you chose is very, very vivid, and I really love the contrast between the oranges that you used on the one side, and the greens and the blues that you chose in other spots. It's pretty. It pops, especially against the black background.
I tried to use just basic rules of color that I can remember. Contrast or complementary contrasting colors, so like red and green. The very back, you can't really see it that well, but the very back of this layer of images is sunset. That came from one of the stories too. I can't remember the story, but I like the way that sunset shone through. So some of that coloring is because of that. And then part of it is because of the artwork that I picked out of the text. And so that layering of green, that I believe that's some of that. And then somehow, I don't know what I did, but I started applying filters to try to get the colors to change. And I was able to get it to achieve something, trying to get the colors to work together, just trying to follow a little bit of rules.
It's really powerful how it really draws you in. I just wanted to say to our viewers here that both Salisha and Clint were chosen for first prize for this year's festival. And as a result, they will be receiving $200, each of them will receive a $200 gift card from the University of Montana bookstore. I'm not sure if you've received any word or confirmation of that recently, but as they say, checks in the mail. And so I wanted to make our viewers aware of that. And I'll say it again, it has been an honor and a privilege to work with both of you in reviewing your works, as well as to have you both on today. And in terms of a wrap up, kind of already started that a little bit. I, again, want to thank Salisha as well as Clint for their participation in this year's contest. And I know that personally I learned quite a bit from looking at these works, as well as through interviewing the two of you about the works that you chose and the process that you went through to create them. And I'm hoping that all of you out in YouTube land did too. And I am hoping that next year we will be able to hold the second annual Public Domain Student Art and Film Festival, probably about the same time. But you know, timelines could change. Thank you to the two of you, and thanks to our viewers. And I will just wrap it up and sign off here. So thanks again.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Thank you.